Hey guys, today we're going to cover quadratic inequalities. So we hopefully all remember how to solve a quadratic equation. So we have a couple different methods. We can factor. We can graph. We can square root it if it's in the correct form. And we can also use something called the quadratic formula. Okay, so all of these methods do apply to solving a quadratic inequality. But since it's an inequality, our solution is not going to be a finite number of answers. It will be a range on the number line. Okay, so we're going to solve them exactly the same, but the solution is going to be a little bit different depending on what our inequality is like. Okay, so let's try a simple one. Let's do x squared plus, let's do 3x, and then let's do minus 18. Okay, oops. And we will set that greater than or equal to 0. Okay, so your first step is still the same. You still want to make sure it's set to 0. Now, every inequality has what we call a related equation. So we're going to pretend that we're just solving the equation, just like we normally would. Okay, now this guy factors. So I'm going to go ahead and factor it. Okay, setting each factor equal to 0. I get -6 and 3. Okay, now the thing to remember is you are not solving an equation, you are solving an inequality. So what we're going to do is we're going to put our solutions of -6 and +3 on a number line. Okay, so -6 goes on your left, +3 goes on your right. Okay, now I know that I'm going to put closed dots on here because it's equal to, just like that. And then, okay, what you'll notice is that the number line is divided into 3 parts. So we have the portion that is to the left of -6. We have the portion that is between -6 and +3. We also have the portion that is to the right of 3. So what we're going to do is we're going to pick a test value. In each of the 3 pieces, if you will, of the number line. Okay, So you want to pick something to the left of -6, something in between -6 and 3, and something to the right of 3. You can choose any number you want, just as long as they're in that particular range. You can choose as easy or as complicated as you want. So for my first test value, I'm going to pick a -10. Okay. Then for my second test value, I'm going to pick a 0 because it's in between -6 and 3. And then for my last test value, I am going to pick 5. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to plug those test values into our inequality and see if we get a true statement. Okay, so -10. It's going to go into here. And I'm going to see if I get a true statement. So that's positive 100 minus 30 minus 18 greater than 0. So that would be 70 minus 18 greater than or equal to 0. So that would be 52 greater than or equal to 0. That is true. Okay. Now we're going to plug in a 0. So 0 squared plus 3 times 0 is 0. Then we get -18 is greater than or equal to 0. That is not true. That is false. Okay. Last one, we're going to put in 5. So that would be 25 plus 15 minus 18 greater than or equal to 0. And then let's see, that would be 40 minus 18, which would be 22 greater than or equal to 0. So that would be true. Okay, so our answer is going to live where we had truth. Okay, so let's go back up to our number line and say, okay, well, -10, which was to the left of -6, that yielded a true statement. So my solution is going to live here. Okay, between -6 and +3, that yielded a false statement. So I'm not going to have solutions in that region. So don't shade. And then finally, 5, which is to the right of 3, yielded a true statement. So there is my solution. Okay, so that is a picture of your solution. Okay, now we need to write it out. Okay, so let's go down a little bit. Okay, I'm going to redraw my number line. Okay, now there are a couple different ways you can write your solution. Depending on how you're asked. Okay, so you can write it in interval notation. So it could look like this. That would be an interval notation writing. Okay, you could write it as an inequality. Okay, now the last way that you could write it is called set notation. So I noticed that your homework uses this. So it's basically kind of a fancy smancy way of writing it. So we're going to go x such that x is less than or equal to -6 or x is greater than or equal to 3. Okay, so this is called set builder notation or just set notation. Okay, don't freak out about it too much. Basically, what you're looking for is that inequality. Okay, all right. So I'm going to post another video with a more difficult problem, but this is essentially the process of solving any quadratic inequality. Pretend it's an equation, cut up your number line, pick a test value, look for truth. Truth leads to your solution, and then write it out. Okay, so again, going to do another video with another example, and hope this helps.